Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to episode 11 of UXR Conversations. I am Noam Segal, Director of User Research at Wealthfront, and the person who built up a random studio somewhere in Mountain View to share conversations with other researchers and research leaders like myself. So it's been fun so far, and I'm really glad you're joining either live or afterwards. It's awesome to have you. So a huge thanks to you. With me today in the studio is Rannie Teodoro, Head of Design at Thumbtack. How are you this afternoon?
Doing well, living the dream.
Yes.
Yeah.
What
Sitting on the
is
couch, living the dream.
so your dream is what exactly? What is this dream
This,
you're
this
living?
this is a pretty foggy dream right now. Bridging the gaps between reality and dream world. But I think keeping positive and staying positive and staying grateful and knowing that things happen for a reason and make the best of it.
There you go. I couldn't agree more. So listen, everyone, if you're interested in the incredible journey, the path from being a researcher to being a research leader to being a design leader, which is a rare occurrence so far in the history of our UX research community, you have joined the right conversation. It's gonna be great. Ronnie, I'm kind of infamous for doing my research about people who come on this thing. And so I want to start
I'm not
with a
surprised.
yeah. I want to start with a paper you wrote.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
yes, the
Seriously? Okay.
motivations and experiences of the on-demand mobile workforce.
Mhm.
Among your co-authors, by the way, fun fact is Morna Aman, who
Yeah.
is clearly a great like mentor and colleague,
Mhm.
because I know so many people who've worked with him in some way, shape, or form. So now you're one more
Yes.
of
Oh
those
my gosh.
people.
I think Moore should become a politician because he knows everybody and knows somebody who knows somebody else. But he has a very special place in my heart because he's a great leader and mentor.
He
Lots of
does.
respect for him. Yeah.
But the thing is, this article, there seems to be a strong connection to what you're doing these days. Is
Hmm.
that fair?
Hmm.
Did
Yeah.
you did you kind of have an interest in what Thumbtack is up to, and we'll get to that later on from an early stage, or is this just a strange coincidence?
Oh my gosh. So do you remember what year that paper was written? Do you have that hand?
2014. 2014.
2014. Yeah. So that paper was written quite a while ago, and it was before Uber and all the whole gig economy really truly blew up, and we had called it the on-demand mobile workforce, and
Mm,
we conducted research with fancy hands users and TaskRabbiters right when it was all just emerging and happening, and understanding what are their motivations, what are their needs. And I had this fascination with how we would bridge online and real world communities, and what does that mean when you combine the physical world challenges and the virtual world challenges. And it I didn't think of Thumbtack around that time, but my interests and career sort of eventually led me to this part. So
you
all
should
happens for a
have
reason.
you should have created Thumbtack, but
Mm,
you didn't. So
I did not. I did not, but I have a big passion for helping, these self-made entrepreneurs build up their businesses. And this it's a different type of on-demand mobile workforce. It's a different type
absolutely.
of gig economy. So it all fits into what I've studied and the different expertise and knowledge base I've built over the last couple of years.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's good to get the context about your professional journey.
Hmm.
Our journeys have some similarities between them,
Hmm.
but I think it's hard to talk about this progression from researcher to research manager, leader, and then design leader without going back to where it all began. You were in academia for a while. You have a
Hmm.
PhD in communication.
Hmm.
When you think about that, by the way, about getting a PhD and then going into UX research, which I'm guessing is becoming more and more popular these
Hmm.
days than ever before, how do you feel about that? And what you've taken with you from the PhD experience to what you do today?
Yeah. How do I feel about
Well,
the?
going down the academic, kind of the full PhD
Mhm,
route compared to getting a
mhm,
more kind of professional master's or
mhm.
something else.
Yeah. For me, the PhD degree was about developing a type of thinking and how to use frameworks in and apply them. So it's not just about reading tons of articles. I mean, there's lots of that, but reading tons of articles and writing a dissertation, applying for the grant proposals, there's tons of that in graduate school. But for me, the value is around the how to think and the why to think that way. And the strategy around triangulating all these sources of information and not just investigating areas where um, there's a gap in the literature, but building on top of the existing literature and using that prior knowledge to inform your thinking. So it just gets stronger, better, and better. And that's really product development too, when it comes to iterative research and iterative design. You don't just go and create this. I mean, you could, right, have this new feature and you just go and create it, and it's just out there in the world. But probably the smarter, stronger way to develop products is you look at what else is out there. Where are the gaps? How do you build on top of what is already out there and make that even stronger or better?
And then when you finished, kind of what was the point where you first entered the kind of industry side as a researcher?
Hmm. When I finished, okay, so you're taking me back. Um, So for me, I my plan was to become a professor. That was my plan. And even before that, my plan after undergrad was I'm going to go into law school. And love my parents, but growing up in an Asian household, you had a couple of options of what you were to be when you grow up. You were a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer or accountant. And
If it
for me,
makes
I was
you if it makes you feel
like,
better, Jewish households are the same. So we're both
okay.
failures. So that's
Okay.
okay, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm PhD, so it's a different kind of doctor, but I don't think that's what my parents meant.
No.
No, that's definitely not what they meant. But that was my career trajectory. I'm going to go into law school, and that's what I'm going to do. And did the communication and political science double major. Yeah, I was on that track and applied to law school, and where I got my undergrad and also my PhD at Rutgers University, the School of Communication and Information. I realized that I was at this Research One institution, but I'd never conducted research. It's like I should probably go and do this. It probably makes sense for me to take advantage of a program that my institution is known for. So I applied and got to work with Dr. Itzik Yanovitsky at Rutgers University. And my first research project as a sophomore in undergrad was counter advertising message strategies for
Hmm.
college students underage drinking. And I remember thinking, like, this is fun. This is fun. Like, I like the idea of understanding this existing knowledge, having my own questions, investigating, and doing this type of thing. And then
So
eventually,
is
yeah,
this like instilling fear in the hearts and minds of underage drinkers to get them not to drink? Is this the idea?
yes, yeah.
Okay.
Well, our research found that fear appeals were not as effective as guilt appeals. So, if you drink, you will die is not a very effective message strategy compared to your mom can see this on Facebook. Do you really want to be known as this person? And that was more effective for college students. But that was
This is
all the
a
way. Yeah.
this is a classic parenting strategy,
Yeah.
by the way, as well. It's like, I'm not angry with you. I'm just disappointed.
Yes. Yes.
It
And
works. It
still
works.
does. Still does. My mom still knows how to use it. But after my undergraduate degree, I completed uh, the senior honors thesis and worked with Dr. Yanovitsky, and he eventually told me, you can do this as a job. You could do this for a living. But it didn't really occur to me to become a researcher or to conduct research for a living, right? I was like, Professor, you're going to write my letter for law school. What do you mean that I could be doing this for a living? And eventually, he ended up meeting my dad at a poster conference type of event. It was like, your daughter, she could be a doctor instead of a lawyer. It's just a PhD. And then of course my dad hears that and he's like, yeah, that's great. And I think having that type of influence, obviously my dad and I chatted about it uh, afterwards, but having that type of influence for a professor, faculty member to say, hey, you're really good at this thing. You're also very passionate about it. You can do that for a living. I think without that type of influence, I wouldn't be where I am today. So eventually, one thing led to another, right? I got into the PhD program, conducted a bunch of research, including this paper that you referenced earlier, and joined Facebook. Now I'm at Thumbtack and leading a team. So that's my track.
So, was it at Facebook where you first transitioned from an IC role to a management role in industry?
Mhm. Yeah, in the industry. Mhm.
Can you talk about how that transition was? Oh, and by the way, you were working on search at Facebook for a while,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Okay, this goes out to all current Facebook researchers, other employees.
Oh
The
boy.
best thing about Facebook is groups. It's the communities that are built
Mhm.
within Facebook, and I'm pretty sure that Facebook have recently reorged around community.
Mhm.
It is impossible to search for things within groups and communities. It is a terrible,
Ugh.
terrible experience. And please, it's such a valuable product. And I know search is hard. I know search is hard. You can
Mhm.
probably tell me how hard search is. But I
Mhm.
beg you, Facebook people, let's do this. Let's make group search better. And if you need a research participant, I volunteer. Hold on.
It's so kind
Let's
of
add
you. That's
my
so great.
let's add my email. If you want to improve Facebook group search, this is my email. Get in
Oh
touch.
boy.
Okay.
I could put you in touch with a couple of researchers who would love to hear your
I
opinion. So,
I have interestingly, I have worked with at least one more Facebook researcher who was on search, but never mind.
okay.
Tell us about tell us about this transition because we're talking about growing into leadership roles
Mhm.
here, and not
Mhm.
only research leadership roles, but growing even beyond that. So, can you tell us a bit about that transition within Facebook from the IC role to the management role, how that was, what the opportunity was, and what that experience was like for you?
Mhm. I really enjoyed my time as an IC. And the reason why I mentioned that is because it was so hands-on. You're in the weeds. So close to the people problems. You feel the pain, especially when it comes to search, when you have something so simple as like for we often did competitive research and we asked them to use Google, for example, and a common response was, "It just works. It's magic. It just works. It just knows what I'm searching for." And they so quickly bypass these screens or interactions around the autocomplete and typing in 3 characters and selecting something, and then from there going to the search results page, and then from there going into the landing page of the website that they were looking for. And within a matter of seconds, they've already made these logical leaps and have interacted with so many surfaces that they don't even realize it, right? And I love that. I love that there's so much complexity behind something so simple.
Yeah.
And as an IC, that those types of problems that exist within the product are a little bit different than the types of challenges you might face organizationally or cross-functionally. And as an IC, while I was able to be heads down and conduct research, be with participants, work with cross-functional partners, have impact, nationally and internationally. I was working a lot on international search too, for example. I still noticed that there were organizational challenges and things I had to advocate for with my manager, for my manager across the different team for the product, and there were efficiencies that I wanted to be a part of. And one thing I noticed was I felt that I was outside of certain rooms where
Yeah.
decisions were being made, and it had a direct impact on what I was doing on the ground. And that wasn't always the most pleasant experience. And I found that in order for me to have the biggest amount of impact or change, uh, I needed to be in those rooms or help advocate for ICs. And by advocating for ICs, I could be advocating for users as well. And not everybody is down for that. Rightfully so. Management takes a different type of skill set, but also a different type of passion. If you want to be in the weeds, conducting the work, executing on these methods, you're not going to get that in management. So I decided to try it out. I was, first from IC, became a research lead, was mentoring a couple of folks, realizing like, oh, maybe this is something I'm really good at and enjoy. And then eventually made the leap over to management and haven't looked back since.
You mentioned the passion and the skill necessary.
Mm-hmm.
The passion can just be there or not, but
Mm-hmm.
skills you need to develop. And I wonder how you've developed your management skills, because this is something I think we could all do a better job at and actively seek improvement in that area. I think
Mm-hmm.
people who get a PhD are typically very dedicated to their craft, or you would not spend
Yeah.
that many years
Yeah.
learning how to become a better researcher. I'm just not sure we're as dedicated to the craft of management, and it's so important. How have you been developing your management skills this whole time, ever since you made that transition? Do you have any good tips, any good ideas around
Wonderful.
that, and anything you've done actively to pursue becoming a better manager?
You want to know the secret? I'll tell you the secret.
Oh yeah, oh yes, I do. Go right ahead.
It's a secret, and it's not much of a
Oh,
secret at all.
I'm just gonna record this for me. So 18 minutes and 15 seconds into it, Ronnie is gonna give us the secret to management.
To
Go.
management.
Go for it.
The secret is building off of what you're already good at and using that to inform where to go next and experimenting with it. Or at least that's what has worked for me. And what I mean by that is I I identify as a researcher. And so much of what I have learned is embedded in research skills and frameworks and understanding people. So why not use that strength towards management? So when it comes to research methods, if I don't understand something, or it's a highly ambiguous problem, what's the first thing you typically do? Typically, uh, especially in any graduate program, what you'll do is conduct a literature review.
Hmm.
Okay, what does that mean in industry? Well, do some reading, listen to podcasts, interview, start interviewing or talking with other experts to inform your thinking. And that was one of the first things I did when I made the transition from research lead to research manager. Is I talked to the folks who just recently went through the transition. I also talked to folks who had several years of experience and tried to understand what did you go through? how do I learn from your experience and your mistakes so that way I also don't do them, or I
Yeah.
also don't do them, or what reading should I do? What podcast should I listen to? All of that information, consolidate it and synthesize it, right? And then understand, like, okay, where are the gaps here? What are these actionable takeaways that I can go and execute on? Let me experiment with that. From there, have some findings and insights. All right, get some feedback. Let me go and adjust. So I basically just described the research process, but applying it over to management. One of the things I do with my ICs and with managers is ask for forgiveness right away. Ask for forgiveness early and say, I'm going to be experimenting with things, and I'm sorry if it doesn't quite work the first time, but I'm going to need your help to iterate on it and improve it. And I hope, similar to how you're growing and I can help you grow, you can help me grow too. And I find that that really works. But again, I'm still improving my process.
I mean, I love that, and I love interviewing, and I love podcasts, and I love reading. So this is great.
Yeah,
This this,
you're already
this
doing it. You're
process,
already doing
it
it.
works. It works for me. I could do this all
Yeah,
day long.
yeah.
Um, so we have a limited amount of time, and so I want to kind of fast forward a bit because we're talking about researchers as design leaders, or maybe
Hmm.
more broadly, researchers in leadership roles that go beyond research.
Hmm.
You recently changed your role at Thumbtack to head of design, so
Hmm.
you are now one of, I would say, few researchers who are in that
Hmm.
position of leading design or leading product. I've worked with two other people, Paul Adams at Intercom, who runs product there and used to be a researcher at some well-known social media companies as well, and search engines.
Hmm.
And my current manager, Apeksha, who's VP of Design at Wealthfront, started out at Wealthfront really more in a research role than a design role, and now she's leading design. But this is still a rare occurrence.
Hmm.
And I want to explore that for everyone who is watching or who will watch, who's interested and who's aspiring to go into those sort of roles. So, first of all, just broadly, why do you think this is a rare occurrence? Kind of what's your take on that? Why aren't we seeing more researchers in the topmost leadership positions within design, within product, in tech companies?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a good question. Immediately, my head goes towards design has had a bit of a head start on us getting hired in
Hmm.
um, in different companies, but I don't have data to say whether or not that's true. That's just my hypothesis. So let's assume that they've entered in a little bit longer, so have had more time to transition into these types of leadership roles. My other hypothesis, though, is that because businesses tend to be so metrics driven, um, the design has such a direct impact on business performance and can be so quickly tied to what is being built on the engineering side of things. Whereas research, there's a lot of invisibility behind the type of influence that we have or can have. So it's just not as seen as much. And that can have an impact on who we decide to promote into leadership or what roles we decide to hire. So I see that having a bit of a piece to it.
It's funny you mention invisibility because
Hmm.
in preparation for this conversation, I reread the wonderful Medium article by Emma Bolton from 2018. It's titled Researchers Are the UX Glue. And the subheading is glue is often invisible, but plays a fundamental role in binding things together.
Hmm.
And that to me reflects both the part of the explanation of why this is a rare occurrence, but also the opportunity. When you think of what are some of the unique opportunities and some of the challenges that researchers might encounter as they strive to get into these most senior roles? What do you think some of those are? Both the opportunities, but also the challenges in entering a role like you recently entered as head of
Hmm.
design.
Yeah. So we can talk about the opportunities.
Yeah,
Again,
please.
again, it goes back to what are the strengths of a researcher. You can, as an example, researchers do a really great job of synthesizing information from multiple sources, and you could see this in our meetings where an analyst will say this, uh, a community success agent will go and say this other thing, or et cetera. Like, or this comes out of our from our sales and success calls, kind of thing. And for us as researchers, we try to do a systematic job of consolidating this information and distilling it down to not just themes but insights. And we have that practice of identifying patterns in behavior, and also a practice of triangulating as much as possible wherever possible. We also have the practice of identifying different biases. Um, we do a really great job of advocating for underrepresented communities because our role is to bridge the gap between uh, who we speak
Yeah.
to, who we survey, and then bring that and bubble that up into our products and our decision making. So, yeah, this is where I think research leaders can play a bigger role because they're already doing it, just in a different application. When it comes to challenges, I think that we can often be seen as the soft skill type of role. And our greatest strength to be seen as our greatest weakness. And I think what we need to do is, again, triangulate what our strengths are with where we know our gaps to be, and build up our business acumen, where we are spending a little bit more time with the data, and a little bit more time in those business and strategy conversations. Uh, Partnering and being seen as a partner, true partner to our cross-functional partners, instead of perhaps taking requests from them for, like, oh, what are your research questions? Oh, let me go and service that for you. And instead saying, let's partner on where the biggest gaps in our understanding are and where our product needs to go. And I think we have a bigger role to play there, leadership wise.
I love that. I had a question, a follow up to that, which kind of is in line with something that Tiana is asking here. So
Hmm.
I was going to ask, how can researchers prepare to take on these types of roles? How did you go about leveling up on all aspects of design more broadly now that you're heading up design? Um, we have a viewer who, for every single episode so far, thank you so much for this, has asked a question. It's like the Guinness
Yay!
Book of Records. Will at some point acknowledge this. Tiana, thank you. So
Real
so she's
MVP.
asked. There you go. So she's asking about mentorship and what's your strategy of mentorship? What's your suggestion for
Mhm.
junior researchers to seek for approach and work with their mentors? I think these questions go together because mentorship is one of the ways in which you can level up and prepare to take on these sort of roles, not just when
Mhm.
you're at the junior level, but also when you're very senior. I imagine you've had your own set of mentors and guides throughout this process. So I'd love for you to share a bit about that and with coupled with Tiana's question as well.
Mhm. Yeah. I get this question a lot about what's the best way to find a mentor, or how do you, if you're just starting out, what do you need to do? And my response is to, it kind of goes back to the research strategy, is uh, triangulate as much as possible. And what I mean by that is you don't have to just triangulate with data, but triangulate with humans too, in the way of identify your community. And it doesn't have to be a mentor, but think about it as several sources of information that can allow you to inform your own thinking. So maybe there is a type of informal mentorship that happens with a very senior PM who is very strong at product development, but can't give you the mentorship on methods. But that product development skill is still so valuable. So learn that thing from that person. How do they do that? What can you take away? And that's sort of how I approached my own type of mentorship, is create this curriculum for myself where I'm like, okay, this person's really good at that. I want to learn that skill. And then that person is really good at this other thing. I also want to learn that skill. And I'm going to supplement or complement that skill with something I know that this other person is really good at, on top of the other inputs of information or learning I can gather from books, podcasts, etc., videos, all of that. And identify a couple of mentors. So that way you're not just getting one source of information, but you're getting many, and that can build you up. The other thing I will say about mentorship is eventually you're going to outgrow your mentors. And I think that's something that people forget, because your mentor can only take you so far before you're going to need to fly on your own.
And the better they are, the faster that'll happen.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not just you have one, but you can have many. And why not?
I totally agree. I would add that, first of all, I've come to realize at some point in life that you just have to go for it. You know, if you're waiting on the perfect mentor or the perfect way to ask someone to help you with mentorship, then you'll never get the mentorship you need. So, you know, get that courage going, put yourself out there, ask people for mentorship, and you will be surprised at how many people will be happy to help you. But I would add to that, to your point, once you do outgrow your mentors and once you do level up and learn a lot more about your profession, be a mentor as well. Be a giver.
Yes.
Few
Yeah.
things give me more pleasure in my professional life than being a mentor and hearing from people that anything I said or people I spoke to said was helpful, educational, informational, inspirational. I love that. It brings me so much joy. And, you know, it happens here and there, and it's awesome. So find mentors, just go for it. Don't wait another day, because mentorship will not come to you. And then later on, be a mentor. The world needs a lot more mentors, a lot more givers, people who can share their expertise. It's the best way to learn. It's the best way to grow. So
yeah.
that's
And
my
the other
take.
thing, the other thing I would add for Tiana is, I love this question, and it suggests that she herself is trying to grow, is
Absolutely.
to express, she's already doing this by asking a question, is expressing some type of vulnerability and saying, hey, here's my skill set, or here's where I need to learn a bit more. And I would encourage her and others to continue to be vulnerable in that regard and say, this is where I'm lacking. I need help. Is this something you can help me with or keep a pulse on and help me grow? And I find that that gets more respect than you just trying to prove yourself and just do it and not ask for help. But people feel really great to be that type of help.
Awesome. Thanks again, Tiana, for the question. I wanted to ask you, so I read this great book, which I forget who recommended it to me. It's The First 90 Days. Have you read it?
I have it like on this bookshelf.
So it's good, right? It's especially when you're entering a new, oh, there you go. This is not planned. Not planned. This is live television. Nothing is planned. So it's a good book. It's a good book. One of many on my shelf in my Kindle. What day are you at as head of design at Thumbtack? Give
Oh
or
my
take.
gosh,
Have you
I don't
passed the
know.
90-day mark,
No,
or
no. It's like
okay?
2 or 3 weeks, something like that.
Because I really wanted to ask you if as much as you're able to share, kind of
Hmm.
what were your thoughts coming in about the first 90 days at Thumbtack? How is the design team kind of operating right now? What makes you tick? What's special about the Thumbtack design team? And kind of, just what are you excited about getting into this role and
Hmm.
continuing to build out Thumbtack? And I think anything you can share about the experience of entering this role and doing this and those first 90 days could be so beneficial for people to hear about.
Yeah. So my first thought goes to how amazing the design, research, and creative teams are, and how wonderful the managers are too. They have it handled, and they were so gracious about welcoming me into this new role and whatever I needed and the support I needed, and they've just been truly fantastic. So I shout out to them. Um, and the other thing I will say is that I'm really excited about is for our teams to get even more so than we are today, more metrics informed versus metrics driven. I think we can rush to the business performance and how much revenue we're generating and all of these very like these things change so often, especially with COVID and the lack of stability that we're seeing across the country, right? Uh, how different businesses are performing. So, what that does for research and design leaders is it forces us to have more of a microscope as as to like what are we really building here? What are the problems that we're solving for, especially as they are a bit more exacerbated because of what's happening in the world today?
Yeah.
And which of these problems are evergreen? Let's focus on those things. Let's continue to build for those things. Create an experience that addresses it directly versus disparate pieces that may or may not, fingers crossed, address some of the more, typical metrics that we're driving toward. Let's just build a great experience. And I say that very with the intention of like oversimplifying it. But yeah, yeah, I'm really excited for that, for us to focus on the experience.
Really cool. What else? What else can we talk about? Do you want to ask me a question? I don't know.
Yes,
Like,
I would love to ask you a question.
go right ahead.
So, how was your transition from into management? What was your story?
So, when I think of that question, I'm not quite sure when that transition happened.
Hmm.
Essentially,
Hmm.
I grew up in Israel, and Israelis typically serve in the military, and I did too. And that was my first experience, I would say. I'm not sure I can say I was a manager because it's a bit different in the military with
Hmm.
ranks and very
Hmm.
strict procedures and so forth. But I
Hmm.
was definitely in a leadership role, and I definitely had people who I was responsible for who were reporting to me in a sense. So that was my first experience, and I took away a whole lot from that. And that's not to say that I, believe in running a militaristic research operation or anything. And obviously, a lot of things need to be adapted. But I am very grateful for that time in my life, and
Hmm.
I learned a lot about it. But you are thrown in the deep end. You know,
Hmm.
you enter the army when you're 18 years old. So I was very young entering this type of role. Uh, Later on in tech and or in graduate school and then in tech, I've learned a lot from in each step of the way, and I think I've discovered that to our conversation earlier, one of my favorite things about management, and I think you mentioned this too, is the ability to empower others and
Yeah.
through them your users, your customers, your clients, whatever you call them. It's a really incredible feeling, and when that's coupled with mentorship and the joys of mentorship, it's it's fantastic. So so yeah, that's a tough one for me to answer because I'm not even sure when I even started considering myself a manager, and I've also bounced between kind of
Hmm.
IC roles and management roles.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm definitely excited about continuing down the management path. And I
Nice.
think it's a marvelous thing that more and more researchers are entering roles like the one you have
Hmm.
as head of design, as head of product.
Hmm.
I do think we have a few incredible skills that are very conducive to being a
Yeah.
great leader in those areas. So.
Yeah. And I would love, to your point, I would love a world where we sort of, maybe this is a controversial thought. We sort of
Which is
stop.
great
Yeah,
for my ratings. This is
you
great.
want
Yes,
controversial thought.
we need controversy. Go
Controversial.
for it.
Stop. Yeah, stop thinking about it as a research leader or a design leader, and just thinking about it as a leader. Why and it's similar, I think maybe I feel this more acutely as a female leader, is where it's like, "Oh, yeah, she's a female leader. We need more female leaders." It's like, "I'm a leader, and you're a leader, other people are leaders, and our expertise or our training might be in research or design, but the skills of a leader is around building teams, creating structure, understanding people, what are their needs, making sure that they're growing. These are agnostic of, uh, I mean, it can be complemented by your training, right? And of course, there's some level of craft and feedback that needs to be put into play. But when you get to a certain level, right, that you're pulling from the same skills. And I think we don't bat an eye when research reports into design, but why can't it be where design reports into research? Or we don't bat an eye when design reports into product or engineering, but why can't it be the other way around? And what's the rationale there? So I think again, taking the researcher hat on, putting the researcher hat on, and saying, should we be questioning our assumptions? And I think it's only a matter of time before you have a researcher who is starting their own company and they're the co-founder or founder instead of being, a core function within a product lane. I think there's only time will tell, but that is my prediction. So you got a tip, you got a secret, you got a controversial thought, and you got a
There you
prediction.
go. I think we should just end there while we're on a roll. Thank you so much for all of
Thank
this.
you. Thanks
I
for
asked
having
this
me.
question. I asked this question because I listen to a lot of podcasts and everyone asks this question, so I do too because I'm
Okay.
imitating others. If people want to reach out to you, learn from you, get your mentorship or anything else, what's the best way? And we'll add it to the show notes too, so it'll be there. But just in case, anything else you want to add on how people can reach you?
I just say reach out on LinkedIn, Twitter. I'm also probably most active on Instagram at Ronnie Finds. Please reach out. I'm always happy to chat and connect.
That's awesome.
Thank you
By the
so
way,
much for
someone
having me.
my pleasure. Someone I'm quite familiar with, aka my wife, is a huge supporter. She says, "Yes, good job, proud of you."
Yay! Oh my
So
gosh.
so there you go. Thank you so very much. Thank you to everyone who's watching and engaging with us. Really appreciate it. If you want to have a conversation or if you need anything, I am at noamseg@gmail.com or noamseg on the Twitter. Hope you have a great afternoon and see you next time, which is going to be very soon because I just can't stop having these conversations.
Can't stop,
So
won't stop.
be on the lookout. It's coming. Bye for now.
Thanks, Sam.